Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Annie Wade, Delta Zero co-chair, along with Lois McCrae. We're so happy that you were able to join us this morning. As we have our guests coming in, I would like for you to take a moment of silence with us for our community and for our country. Next slide, please. At this time, I will share with you our technology and virtual meeting protocol. The forum will be on Facebook Live and it will be recorded. All questions must be typed into the chat box. Participants, please keep your microphones off. Questions and answers will occur following the presentations. If you're not a presenter, please keep your cameras off to maximize media bandwidth. At the end of the session, please complete the evaluation survey. Next slide, please. Dr. Stephanie Barrage, our president, Minneapolis-St. Paul Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Inc., will give us a welcome at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And we're so glad that you are here with us today. On behalf of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Alumni Chapter, we welcome you to our 4th annual Caregiving and Aging Forum, focusing on mental wellness. For more than 4 decades, our purpose has been to enhance the Twin Cities through public service programs. And again, we just want to welcome you today, that you grow and you learn with us together. And we're so happy that you are taking the time to be with us. Without further ado, I will introduce Laverne McCartney-Knighton, who will be the moderator for today. Good morning, Laverne. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Stephanie. Thank you for that introduction. We are just so excited to be hosting today's 4th annual forum on caregiving and aging, a focus on mental wellness. And it's in partnership, excuse me, with Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota chapter, and Domestic Abuse Project, or DAP, as some of us know them to be. Thank you for joining us for this virtual event for Alzheimer's and dementia caregivers, supporters, and others. We hope you will gain new insights and learnings about each of these life-changing illnesses and what you can do to support your loved ones who are affected by or directly impacted by these issues. Because let's be real, mental wellness is not always a subject we openly discuss in our Black and Brown community. So we hope after today's presentation that the conversation can begin in our home and in our workplaces and wherever we may find ourselves interacting with those who are suffering from such illnesses and who are experiencing abuse in some form or another. And without further ado, I would love to introduce our panel. Today, you will be hearing from Hillary Tyler of Alzheimer's Association, Nasise Gelata of Alzheimer's Association, and you will also be hearing from Grace Minor, Domestic Abuse Project, and Rita Tagasolo Wiltz from Domestic Abuse Project, and we will hear a victim survivor story from Linda Gale Roy. So we are just so excited to begin this morning, and we welcome our distinguished panel of program experts. All right, so we will open with 2 wonderful experts from Alzheimer's Association, the Minnesota North Dakota chapter. And you will be hearing from Nasise Gelata, and I will give you a little bit of Nasise's bio. With a rich background in community organizing and program management, Nasise has shaped her career around fostering inclusive environment. Rooted in her identity as a Black woman with Ethiopian heritage, she brings a unique perspective, emphasizing cultural nuances and understanding, which she passionately weaves into her work to ensure that DEI initiatives are culturally responsive and actively address the needs of underserved communities. She is currently the Senior Director, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Alzheimer's Association. Along with her will be Hillary Tyler. Hillary is the program manager for the Alzheimer's Association Minnesota North Dakota chapter. In her 5 years with the association, Hillary has a focus on working with volunteers and community groups to provide dementia education and outreach events. She is a graduate of North Dakota State University, where she received her Bachelor of Science in Communication with an emphasis in public relations, sport and recreation, and business administration. Welcome, Hillary and Nasise.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that warm welcome. My name is Nasise Garata. I'm the Senior Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Alzheimer's Association Minnesota North Dakota chapter, and we're so happy to be here today to talk to you a little bit about Alzheimer's and dementia. We have a 20-minute presentation that will touch on a brief range of topics, including the impact of Alzheimer's, risk factors, warning signs, resources, and how you can join the fight against Alzheimer's. I do want to make a note, this is not an in-depth program, but if you're interested in more programming from us, you can definitely go to our website, alz.org/CRF, to find a presentation on all of these topics, a longer presentation on all of these topics. All right, so in our first section, we will start by taking a brief look at Alzheimer's and dementia. We'll talk about changes associated with normal aging versus potential warning signs of Alzheimer's, the relationship between Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and risk factors. And along the way, we'll hear from experts who will walk us through some of these topics. So before we head into our videos, one of the most common myths or misunderstandings about Alzheimer's disease today is that it's a normal part of aging. And while changes to memory can come with age, Alzheimer's is much more than that. It's a disease and it can be progressive and fatal, which is why Alzheimer's Association is leading research and all types of programming to support those affected. Additionally, one of the key things of Alzheimer's disease is that it kills nerve cells and tissues, which affects an individual's ability to remember, to think, plan, and ultimately function. In the first video, a leading expert in aging will talk to us about Alzheimer's disease and other memory disorders, and we'll go a little more in depth on the differences between typical age-related changes and possible warning signs of dementia.
As we get older, cognitive problems become more noticeable for almost everybody, and it can vary from person to person. Typically with age, people have trouble coming up with the word they want right when they want it. They have trouble remembering names and they don't think quite as quickly. What's more concerning, or what might be the beginning of a memory problem, is people have a lot of trouble coming up with words or names, and it's happening more frequently, and the words or names don't necessarily come to them later. And then they start misplacing things. But not just once in a while, because we all misplace things, but more often. And it begins to interfere day to day. That should be a warning sign for people that this might be the beginning of a memory problem.
All right, so that was a leading expert, Dr. Salloway, talking through normal aging versus dementia. And now you may have heard the terms Alzheimer's and dementia used interchangeably, and while they're related, there is a difference between the two. Now we're going to watch a video from one of our association experts, Dr. Heather Snyder, and she'll explain how these two are related.
Dementia is the umbrella term for an individual's changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. There are many possible causes of dementia, and Alzheimer's is the most common cause. Other causes of dementia are vascular dementia, which is marked by changes in the blood flow in the blood vessels in the brain. Dementia with Lewy bodies, identified by specific brain changes throughout the brain that include the buildup of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. And frontal temporal dementia, which is marked by brain cell loss in the front sections of the brain or the frontal lobe. Each type of dementia may have distinct characteristics to cause specific behaviors in the individual, but there is also some overlap in behaviors among the types of dementia.
All right, so as we heard Dr. Snyder explain, a diagnosis of dementia is incomplete because dementia is more of an umbrella term that's used to describe changes in memory, but what we do know is that Alzheimer's tends to be the leading cause of dementia, with 60 to 80% of dementia cases being Alzheimer's related. Another thing that we know is everyone's at risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And while we don't know the exact cause, there are a few known common factors. And so in this final video, Dr. Snyder will explain the most common.
Alzheimer's disease is marked by specific brain changes that result in the clinical changes in individual experiences. That is, changes in memory, thinking, or reasoning. And ultimately, Alzheimer's is fatal. The exact cause for these changes is unknown, but there are some hints as to what may contribute to an individual's risk. Age is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's, and when we look at populations of people, we see an increased risk over the age of 65. However, Alzheimer's is not normal aging. Family history is also a known risk factor. Research has shown that those who have a parent or a sibling with Alzheimer's are more likely to develop the disease, and that risk increases if more than one family member has Alzheimer's. When we talk about the genes involved in Alzheimer's, there are two categories that could potentially be involved: risk genes and deterministic genes. Risk genes increases an individual's risk for developing the disease, but does not guarantee that they will develop Alzheimer's. Deterministic genes, which are rare for Alzheimer's, guarantee that the person will develop the disease.
So as Dr. Heather Snyder explained, there's a number of different risk factors. But in addition to the main ones for the general population, we also know that Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, and women are at a higher risk for Alzheimer's disease. Research shows that Black Americans are about twice as likely as white Americans to have Alzheimer's or another dementia, and Hispanic Americans are 1.5 times more likely. So the reason for these differences is still being studied, but what we do know is that everyday racism and the stress that incurs for Black and Brown communities is one of the factors. In addition to that, socioeconomic barriers and the structural racism that prevents us from accessing quality healthcare, housing, and access to healthy foods are also a contributing factor. And as I said earlier, women are also at greater risk than men to develop the disease, with nearly 4 million women in America living with Alzheimer's today. And while we know that women live longer than men, that doesn't necessarily explain why we're more likely to develop the disease. So researchers are doing more with genetic differences between men and women to try to describe or get to the root of why we see this. So on this next slide, we're going to pause a little bit and test what we've learned so far about Alzheimer's. So I'm going to ask the question on the screen, and please put in the chat what you think the correct answer is. So for our first question, Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process. Is this true or false? All right, false, that's correct. So while we know that Alzheimer's disease is more than memory loss, I again want to emphasize that it's really a disease that kills nerve cells and tissues in the brain, which, affects our ability to function and do day-to-day activities and can be fatal. So let's try another one. Yeah. Not a normal part of aging. What is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease? Is it genetics, family history, or age? Okay, age, genetics, age. Genetics, family history. Okay, I'm seeing age the most. So let's go ahead and click that. And that's correct. While all of these are risk factors for Alzheimer's, we know that after the age of 65, the risk of developing Alzheimer's develops every 5 years, with more than a third of people aged 85 and older living with Alzheimer's today. All right, so let's go to our next section where we will talk about the warning signs. So the Alzheimer's Association, as leader in the area, we've developed a list of 10 warning signs that help people understand the difference between normal aging and common signs that may lead to possible dementia. This list is intended to be a tool to help us identify unusual changes in ourselves or our loved ones, but it's important to note that it does not constitute a diagnosis of Alzheimer's and dementia. And if you see these signs in yourself or someone that you're caring for, we always recommend going to your healthcare provider and speaking with them to get a formal diagnosis. All right, so we won't delve into each sign individually, but it's important to be aware of them, so we'll briefly go through them. With number 1 being memory loss that disrupts daily life, such as forgetting recently learned information. Number 2 is challenges in planning or solving problems. So some people may have trouble keeping track of their monthly bills. For 3, we have difficulty completing familiar tasks, such as driving to a familiar location or organizing a grocery list. 4 is confusion with time or place. So a person living with dementia may forget how to drive to somewhere that's familiar. So maybe their work or a friend's house or the grocery store. For 5, we have trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. This also leads to trouble with driving because we have a hard time judging distance or determining color and contrast. For 6, we have new problems with words or speaking and writing. So you may, if you're someone living with Alzheimer's, forget the name of everyday objects or names. You might call people by the wrong name. For number 7, we have misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So most people misplace things now and then, but someone living with Alzheimer's might misplace something, and even after finding it, they might not recall how it got there. And for 8, we have decreased or poor judgment. This is especially when dealing with money. Number 9 is a withdrawal from work or social activities, even hobbies that used to once bring joy, like gardening or spending time with friends and family. And number 9, we're at 10, changes in mood and personality. So a person living with Alzheimer's may be easily irritable or upset when they're outside of their comfort zone. All right, so we're going to advance to the next slide, but I do want to again make note that individuals living with Alzheimer's may experience one or more of these signs to varying degrees, and it's not necessary to experience every single thing to raise concern. And if you notice these signs in yourself or someone else, it's important to see the doctor, as only a healthcare professional can give you a true diagnosis. And as a reminder, you can learn more about the 10 warning signs or consider taking our 10 warning signs education program at alz.org/10 warning signs. All right, and now we're going to transition to the importance of early detection. Again, it's key that we pay attention to changes in our own cognitive health and the cognitive health of those around us. Any changes that might be unusual for our normal level of functioning can be cause for concern. So now we'll hear from dementia expert Ruth Drew, who will talk about the importance of early detection.
There are a number of benefits in early detection of Alzheimer's. For one thing, a person is able to have a voice in what happens next. They can make plans. They can live life more on their own terms. They can also make plans for the future, financial plans, care plans. They can let people know what they want, which can be a real gift later on. It also allows time for families to make plans and to make decisions about who can do what and figure out care and those kinds of issues. Some people are interested in clinical trials. Clinical trials allow people to have access to treatments that aren't available yet. And for some people, that can be a really important thing to pursue.
All right, and now we'll talk a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association resources available to everyone. So first, we have our 24/7 helpline, which provides access to highly trained and knowledgeable staff who can help with education, decision-making support, crisis assistance, or resource identification. We also have our website, alz.org, which includes sections specifically for people living with Alzheimer's and for their caregivers. And now we'll see a brief video.
When I went to the Alzheimer's Association website, which is alz.org, there I was trying to find out more about what was Alzheimer's, what really is this disease, what is younger onset Alzheimer's, what is dementia, is there a cure, how long has this been around, how many people are affected by this, where can I go for resources, where can I go for help, what do I do with this? How can I handle this? Is there more people like me out there? Is there someone that I can talk to if I need to? And there I found the support line that's 24 hours a day. And there I found where I can go for workshops, where I can go and read things and postings that people have done, where I can find out what events is happening in the Alzheimer's Association, where I can see how it's affecting people around the globe.
So as we heard, our website is a wealth of information and resources for anyone living with Alzheimer's or supporting someone who has a recent diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And last but not least, we have our Alzheimer's Association Community Resource Guide or Finder with AARP. And the Finder, Community Resource Finder, is a community-based platform where you can find things like long-term care, community-based services, association offices, and other programs or organizations that offer resources and services for Alzheimer's care. So for our last section, we're going to talk about ways to join the fight. Now that we've taken a basic look at Alzheimer's disease and what resources are available, let's talk about how we can take action. You can volunteer with us. So whether you can spare a few hours during the week or make a more significant time commitment, sometimes doing something helps us feel better. And so you can always reach out to your local chapter. We're all across the United States for volunteer opportunities, or go to our website at alz.org/volunteer. We also do advocacy, so you can become an Alzheimer's Association advocate and speak out on behalf of those who are living with Alzheimer's and their rights. We have Trial Match. This is a service to connect people to clinical trials. We know that Black and Brown people are less likely to be recruited, but it's crucial that we are in these clinical trials because when medicines become available, as research develops, we don't want to be left out. We want to make sure that we're represented and whatever drugs are available will work for us. We also have our Walk to End Alzheimer's. You can join a walk team or form your own walk team and raise money for research and services. Alzheimer's Walk to End Alzheimer's is the largest fundraiser for care, support, and research. And then we have the longest day. So on the longest day, the day with the most light, usually the summer solstice, we raise funds and awareness for care, support, and research efforts of the Alzheimer's Association through an activity of your choice. So if you want to set up a lemonade stand, if you want to do a marathon of some sort, it's totally up to you. And with that, that concludes our presentation. We'll pause here for questions. You can feel free to put them in the chat, and Hillary, our fabulous program manager, will address those.
And before we really hear questions and answers for who to answer, I just want to commend Nasise for sharing such great information, and also just challenge us to really be attentive and to really think about how Alzheimer's and or dementia have impacted each of our lives. Because as I think back on my own journey with family and not knowing and understanding what I've learned today, I had a great aunt who suffered with Alzheimer's, and just in a routine conversation with her, all of a sudden out of nowhere, she just said, "I don't believe I know who you are." And I was so dumbfounded and didn't know how to react. But my mother took me aside and gave me sort of the overview of what she was going through. So I know we all have experienced it in some form or fashion. So hopefully we gained a lot from what Nasise has shared. And I hope we have some great questions that have come out as a result. So Alex, you can share with us any questions that are in the chat.
There's one question in the chat from Cassandra. She said, "Is giant cell arteritis a risk factor?"
That's a really great question. I haven't heard of arthritis being a risk factor for Alzheimer's. Things like a history of stroke or high blood pressure, diabetes is one. Those are all can lead to a higher instance of developing an Alzheimer's, but I haven't heard anything about arthritis. But that's a really great question. I've never been posed that one before, so I'm going to do some research on my end and see if I can find an answer for you.
Great question.
That's all the questions I see.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Hillary and Nasise. Again, I just want to actually highlight too that now that we know that women are 2/3 of the population living with Alzheimer's, let's be mindful and get checked. And that as Black women or Blacks, we are twice as likely as whites to have Alzheimer's, and our Hispanic friends and family, they're 1.5 times as likely as whites. So I think we all should be paying attention to these risk factors that are in existence. And I do see another question.
And there's one more question, in the chat that says, "Can you talk about cognitive impairment? Does that lead to dementia?"
Yeah, thank you for that question, Susan. That is kind of a bit of a long answer. Cognitive impairment or mild cognitive impairment typically will be before an early stage Alzheimer's diagnosis or a dementia diagnosis. It's when our cognition is impacted, but it's not fully affecting our daily life. It hasn't started to cause daily issues or change how we're living our lives. Also, cognitive impairment can come from multiple avenues. Things like our mental health, if we have anxiety or depression, can impact our cognitive impairment. Other things are stress. If we have high stress levels, that can impact our cognition. Also, if we're not getting good quality sleep, that can really impact our cognition too. So oftentimes people will see the 10 warning signs and be like, "Oh my gosh, I need to go talk to my doctor and get tested." And we really encourage people that if you have any concerns about your cognition or that of a friend or family member, talk to your doctor, because just because somebody's showing these signs doesn't always mean it's going to lead to a dementia or a mild cognitive impairment diagnosis. Oftentimes it's going to be a process of ruling things out before they rule possible diagnosis in. So it's a very long process. And I see that Nasi put a link in the chat, which is going to have some more information for you all.
Thank you for that. And I want to go back to Cassandra Lloyd's question, just because, again, I may have misspelled it. So she was referring to giant cell maybe it's arteritis, but it's the inflammation of blood vessels or arteries in the brain. And so she was wondering if that is a risk factor.
Yes.
Versus arthritis. Okay.
Yeah. So again, it's the first time I'm hearing that term. So I'm gonna have to do some research on my end for Cassandra. But anything that impacts our brain can impact the chances of developing an Alzheimer's or a dementia. If we have concussions, that can increase the risk. So if it's gonna affect what is our brains in any manner, it's gonna affect our likelihood of developing dementia, if that makes sense. So
yeah, totally. Totally. Maria has a question, and she said, is genetic testing for Alzheimer's usually covered by insurance, or is that a challenge people are encountering?
So the genetic testing one is very it's a really great question, and you'd have to check with your specific insurance provider. We know, depending on what level of insurance or Medicare, Medicaid somebody has, and their Part Bs, it's going to impact what is covered and what's not. So check with your provider if that is tested. There is the genetic question is always one that we're asked, and there's some genes that if you have them, chances are you know that they're in your family and that you're being tested for them or making the decision if you want to be tested for them. Others are going to say, well, you might be at a little bit more higher risk of developing an Alzheimer's, but that doesn't mean you're going to develop it for sure. So check with your provider, and again, check with your own personal physician who has your health history.
No, that makes sense. Thank you for that. Shirley asked, have you heard of the HATS program and as a clinical trial research for Alzheimer's?
You know, Shirley, I have not heard of the HATS program, but I'm going to take note and make sure that I'm looking it up. Our helpline would have more information on that. So that 1-800-272-3900 number would have more information for you.
And last but certainly not least, Wanda asks, can a traumatic brain injury lead to dementia or ALZ?
Yes. Yep. Traumatic brain injury or concussions, strokes, heart attacks, all of those things can lead to a higher likelihood of developing a dementia or Alzheimer's.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Phyllis says she's a part of the HAT study. So Phyllis, maybe in the chat, you can drop some more information about that. So it looks like Phyllis is a part of it.
Right. Right. So we think we may be through with questions and answers. But before we leave this discussion, I will encourage all of us to, as Nasi said, join the fight. We can volunteer, we can do advocacy, we can participate in the walk to end Alzheimer's, we can participate in trial matches, or we can participate in the longest day. So thank you, Hillary and Nasi, and I pray and hope that we are all going to walk away from this with some great tools to help others as well as ourselves. Now, for our next presentation, we're excited to present to you information about domestic abuse. And we have two great panelists today, Grace Minor. Grace is a clinician with the Victim Survivor Program at the Domestic Abuse Project. She has worked in the mental health field for over 5 years and has primarily focused her work on trauma and domestic violence. She completed her master's degree in Portland, Oregon at Lewis and Clark Graduate School of Education and Counseling. In her free time, she loves to spend time with her loved one and her 2 sweet cats. And she loves reading, crafting, gardening, and spending time in nature. She is a victim survivor therapist with the Domestic Abuse Project. We will also hear from Ann Rita Tagasolo Wilkes. In 2005, Ann Rita served as a volunteer at domestic abuse shelters, helping victims with basic supportive needs. She is the first in her family to graduate from college with a master's degree in counseling psychology with a concentration in marriage and family therapy from Chaminade University of Honolulu. Ann Rita transitioned out of active duty service with the United States Navy in 2010 and has worked in domestic abuse and human trafficking program since 2011. She has supported victims of domestic violence in a variety of supportive roles to include facilitating empowerment groups, domestic abuse shelter management, transitional home manager, housing case management, sex assault and human trafficking crisis response, legal advocate, safety planning coordinator, several relocation safety projects, and is currently the program supervisor for legal advocacy and case management at the Domestic Abuse Project in Minneapolis. She is currently working on obtaining her doctorate in psychology. Ann Rita's dedication to supporting vulnerable and underserved populations is often called a purpose beyond her control. This is the work she was called to do. And I so believe that, Ann Rita, you are one busy woman. So let's welcome Grace and Ann Rita for their presentation, and thank you.
Hello, I'm Grace, and I will be presenting here. And Ann Rita is going to hop in through a presentation if she wants to add into any specific piece to her work she gets to share with us at DAP, as well as we'll help answer questions at the end. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat. We'd be happy to answer them. We both work at the Domestic Abuse Project, and we are very honored to be here today and share a little bit about who we are, what we do, and what abuse can look like. And so with that, I'll talk a little bit about who we are. So Domestic Abuse Project, also known as DAP, is a nonprofit organization. We are based in Minneapolis. We have our main office in Northeast Minneapolis off of Broadway and Central, and also have some pilot offices in other locations in the cities. But we do work with anyone within the state of Minnesota. And I think that's something that has been a wonderful thing that has grown through virtual services becoming more available. We are able to offer virtual services as well as in person. We've been in the work since 1979 and came out of that need for more services for people impacted by domestic violence. For us, the work that we do is so important. We are trying to not only work with domestic violence, but end that cycle of violence, not only in relationships and for individuals, but for our communities. And with that, our mission is exactly that. We hope to continue to build communities free from violence, trying to provide holistic care for everyone in the family. And so with that, that's kind of a unique part of our work, is working not only with those who are being affected by abuse, victims or survivors, as well as those who are using abuse, and trying to both provide therapeutic care as well as that advocacy and that case management service. And we envision a community free of violence and domestic abuse where families can experience healthy, safe, and equal relationships. And with that, I'll go into a little bit more about us and why we do what we do. So at DAP, our values that really guide the work that we do are values of community, social justice, being person-centered, taking accountability, acting in a way that is sustainable with sustainability, and in leaning into the value and the need for learning and innovation. And what that means for us is when we're looking at community, especially domestic violence can occur in the home, but it's affecting communities in that greater sense. It has a ripple effect that can go out and affect our families at large, our neighbors, our communities, our work, our faith communities, whatever that might be. And so because we know that domestic violence not just is impacting the individual, but also affects that community, we want to then engage and listen to and collaborate with the whole community to be able to work on that cycle of violence and work to end abuse in those relationships. And I think another piece too that is important to us is we're looking at how can we show up in a way that is putting you and your story in the forefront of this work. We're here to support you, and we want to empower you and uplift that power that you have, and uplift families and their goals and their needs, and to really understand that. And so what that means to be person-centered is to honor that someone's autonomy, their self-determination, and understanding that everyone, you know, we want to be happy, we want to be safe, we want to feel fulfilled. And so how can we show up in a way to support you and have you be the leader in your story and in your healing? And we also, a big piece of our work is understanding the overall, not only violence in relationships, but also the systems of violence and oppression in our communities and in our world. And so we try to really keep that anti-racist and anti-oppressive work at the forefront when we are doing this. It is a priority because we know that populations experiencing trauma are also experiencing trauma in a much larger system, that violence is not only happening maybe from a partner or family member, but in the systems and in the institutions and the world around us. And so I wanted to just name that and kind of name our values, because that is a huge piece of how we show up in the work that we do with our participants. And with that, I'll go in a little bit to how we understand domestic abuse and intimate partner violence. And with this, looking at what I use the terms domestic abuse and violence interchangeably, but when we're looking at what is domestic abuse, what is intimate partner violence, I like to say that, you know, a lot of the work and the information out there is focused on intimate partner violence, which would mean my romantic partner, my spouse or partner in some way. But also domestic violence can occur with anyone that I have relationship with. So that could be my caregiver, that could be my parent, that could be my adult child who maybe is also in a caregiver role. It could be someone that I share a living space with as well. And so knowing that it is, you know, it's not specific just to someone who is in a romantic relationship with me, but that is a big piece of what can come up. But we also honor that family relationships and living relationships can be spaces where we're experiencing violence or abuse. And when we look at what is abuse, abuse at DAP, as we define it, is a socially sanctioned, learned, and chosen pattern of hurtful behavior. And it's something that is used to gain and maintain power and control over another person, whether that's a family member or partner, but it affects everyone that's involved. It affects, you know, it can affect ourselves, it can affect our siblings, our children, our grandchildren, anyone that comes into kind of our sphere of existence. And with this, we also understand that abuse is a systematic pattern of behaviors in relationship that, again, hold that power, hold that control over another person. And sometimes when we are looking at domestic abuse, it could be something that has been occurring long term. It could be in your relationship for a very long time. It also can be something that comes up later on in our lives. And that can be for a number of reasons. That can be maybe there's increased stress due to financial changes or to changes in health. It can be due to changes in our own mental health, what's going on for us, how we're managing what's going on in our lives. And so that can be a time when it comes up maybe later in our lives, but no matter when it is occurring, it is, you know, never something that anyone deserves to go through. And that's where we want to come in to help those who are experiencing it, as well as providing services for those that might be engaging in harmful behavior to learn different ways to cope with their emotions or to cope with needs or stressors coming up for them so that we can increase that health in our relationships and keep everyone safe. And I'll go in a little bit just to give some examples here about what are types of abuse. And with this, you know, I'm looking at what are types of abuse. We're talking about domestic abuse, domestic violence, or intimate partner violence. And in that sphere or that realm of experiences, I also think of the other language we can use. And so that could be, you know, in a family, if there's a domestic violence, there can also be child abuse occurring. That is domestic violence. Similarly, in relationship or in families where domestic abuse is happening, elder abuse can happen as well, which is that abuse towards someone who is in a vulnerable situation or spot due to age or cognitive ability, or health or physical needs. And so these are things that are occurring within these relationships and have that intersection with domestic violence and domestic abuse. I'll go over, when we look at abuse, different kinds, because often when we are talking about domestic abuse, physical abuse is the big thing that comes up. But there are so many other ways that we can experience abuse in our lives that we want to make sure we name that. I hear a lot from people that come into our services. I do individual and group therapy of, I didn't realize that was abuse. I didn't realize that wasn't okay or that wasn't normal. That's something I've just, you know, thought I had to deal with. And so that's why we like to take time to specifically break down what are different types of abuse that can show up. So physical is the kind of predominant thing we often hear in common messages in our world and society, and that is abuse that hurts the body. So that's going to be any type of contact or any type of physical engagement with you that is harmful, that is causing harm to you, that is not safe. And that would be slapping or strangling or punching or kicking, pinching, anything that is a physical touch to your body that is not wanted, that is not safe, and that is causing harm or seeking to kind of control or get power in that situation over you. I think also specific examples that come up for me when we look at that would be not, and it kind of goes with both physical as well as maybe other ways that we're not being treated in the way we deserve, could be someone not helping me if I need assistance getting into a wheelchair or access to the bathroom or the shower, and someone is taking that away from me, or someone is not giving me the care or the help that I need. There's some of that neglect happening. If that's a purposeful thing that is, maybe making me not feel safe, keeping someone in power, or taking away my power and taking away my autonomy and what I deserve. Another way that abuse shows up in our lives can be emotional. And so that's something we kind of have it broken down of what it's hurting. So that's hurting our heart. And that is putting us down. We have a video that we'll show in a little bit that's going to give an example of what this can look like in a relationship. And that's putting me down, making jokes at my expense, but also screaming or harassing, threatening, different things like that, just using that emotional piece, maybe shaming you or blaming you. That's a big thing. Well, I'm doing this because you made me mad, or different spaces that can come up. And emotional has some similarities with psychological, but psychological is also hurting the mind, hurting my mental health, hurting my well-being. And that's threats to me. That can be threatening, like I'm not going to help you with your needs that you need taken care of, or I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to cause you harm. I'm not going to let you talk to people that are important to you. It also can be threats to themselves. Well, if you say anything, I'm going to hurt myself, or something bad, I'm going to do something to me. It also can be a threat to abandon, or a threat to leave. Another way this shows up, I hear this a lot, is, I haven't been hurt physically, but things are being broken around me, or maybe something's being hit near me. That is also a psychological threat to your safety. And that triggers in our brain that sense of, this isn't a safe space because these threats are happening to me. And with sexual abuse, that is something that is hurting our sexual self. And this can be something that, again, is hard for folks to talk about when they come into DAP or talk to anyone about their experiences, especially if maybe it's in an intimate partner relationship, because of what we've learned and what we've heard about our relationships, and maybe also generational messages we receive about our relationships and about our intimacy. But this would be anything that, again, is not wanted or not consensual, putting us down and our bodies down, our health or intimacy interests down, whatever that might be, or exposure to things that are not something that we want, that are not consensual and not okay. With cyber, this is something that is hurting our sense of safety, of like digital cyber, like online. So this would be, someone that's maybe hacking into your email, or needs to have access to all your accounts, or into your banking accounts, or is questioning who you're talking to, or not letting you answer the phone if family's calling you, different things like that, or putting out things on the internet or the world like that, or stalking, maybe using, I know nowadays there's a lot of security cameras or home footage that we have to keep ourselves safe, and using that as a way of keeping control or monitoring over another person. Other ways that are often used to abuse or to cause harm in domestic violence and abuse in any relationship is religious abuse or legal abuse, or any other types. Anyone, feel free to put in the chat. Feel free to add anything that you feel like we should add to our list. Religious abuse is putting down someone's faith, not letting you go to maybe your chosen faith community or engage in your community. Legal abuse can be threatening to take you to court, or if you maybe are thinking about seeking a separation, using threats around that. Or it can also be, threats of financial abuse of, I've been maybe dependent on this person, and, what am I going to do? I've been made so dependent. I don't have maybe money to my name, or my insurance is connected to this person, and I don't know how that might affect not only my health and taking care of my physical health, my mental health, maybe even my housing, different pieces like that. And so with this, abuse, again, can happen to anyone, no matter the background, no matter age or sex, race, religion. anything, it shows up in any age, and at DAP we work with anyone of any age that has been or experienced abuse or has used a harmful behavior. And again, with this, we want to be able to show up in ways that feel supportive, that honor your experience and what you've gone through. And so with this, we will go to, I believe, our video next, which shows just an example in a relationship, a long-term relationship, what abuse might look like.
These are for you, sweetheart.
Oh, they're lovely.
I love you. What have you been doing all day?
I tidied up, I've not stopped. I've just sat.
Look at the lamp. Dust all over that. Get it sorted. What are you doing?
It's my sister.
You really going to answer that when we're having lunch?
I've not seen her in ages.
Go on then, let's spoil it. Go on. Answer it. Go on. Go on. You daft cow. Why have you bought all this expensive junk? I'll have to give you less money next time. Can't do anything right, can you? Yeah, Tom. Your mother's dressed like a clown. You should see it. It's classic, Liz. The only thing that's missing is a red nose. I'll start calling her Krusty from now on. Hello. I've messaged your dad. Told him I can't make his birthday. Can't be bothered with all your gang ignoring me.
Right.
It's just us. Get these cobwebs cleaned up. Wake up, you lazy pig. It looks ridiculous. Shut up. Think about it before you say anything. Why'd you make me do these things? You're not going anywhere. You're staying here. You're staying here. You're staying here.
That was me, stuck in a cycle of abuse day after day, walking on eggshells in my own home. I reached out, I got the support I needed to leave him, and you can too.
Thank you for showing that. I think that's such a powerful video. I was really glad when our program supervisor for the Victim Survivor program shared that with me. I think it really highlights just what that feels like. Almost you feel that tightening in your chest, and I think it speaks to that the little ways that it adds up, and that also that when there is abuse happening and it's showing up in our lives, it might not be all the time. We can have positive experiences in our relationships too, and that doesn't take away from when there is abuse happening, that is not okay, and that we deserve support and whatever we want to do with that and what our choice may be with that. And just putting it in the context of, why we're here today, thinking of, again, a reminder that was an example of a romantic relationship, but also with caregiving, with aging, how that can show up from other people in our families, and what that isolation and what that kind of power can look like in those dynamics. So I will go over briefly our programs at DAP. So, we are here, and anyone, you always can reach out. I saw Enrita put our information as well as the National Domestic Abuse Hotline information in the chat, which is like an amazing resource. And I'll just go over what we offer so people know what we have and what we might be able to help anyone with. And so we have a few programs here. I'm a part of our Victim Survivor program. We also have a youth program. We have our intervention and prevention program, which is for folks who are using abusive behaviors. Again, kind of take accountability, learn new ways of engaging in relationship. And then we also have advocacy and case management. And so that's helping people find resources, maybe navigating like the legal system if they're wanting an order for protection or a different thing that can give them some more legal protections when they're seeking safety. And so you can go ahead to our next slide. These just give a bit more information about these programs, and I'll go briefly through them. Our Victim Survivor program. So this is my jam. I love talking about the Victim Survivor program since that's what I do on my day-to-day. We have two different ways that we show up for people. We have group therapy as well as individual. Our group therapy we find really helpful because it is breaking that silence and isolation that you often experience. Kind of even in that video, we saw that example of not being able to talk to many people, and we offer different spaces for processing as well as providing information. And individually, you can meet with someone one-on-one and do kind of more traditional talk therapy, or we also have other specialties. There's something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, sorry. And a number of our staff, myself included, are trained in that. And that is just a special modality to help process trauma. And so going into our next slide, we also have our intervention and prevention services. That is specifically a group as well. It's a bit longer, but there also are ways to do it one-on-one. And we work with folks both who come in voluntarily. This is for people who are being harmful or using abuse. We would do one-on-one if you want, or group is for people coming voluntarily, as well as if there is any legal involvement. We offer different services that meet those standards and requirements, and it's giving a lot of information and psychoeducation as well as processing and learning and reflecting on yourself, kind of where have these behaviors come up and how do I learn different ways of showing up. And we also have specific programs, culturally specific groups, and specifically one called Change Step for service members, military members. And I'd say that something that has been in the works for a long time is still a dream, not yet materialized, but we're hoping in our Victim Survivor program to even create a group specific for elders and for folks that have been in long-term relationships. So we also have youth. And so this, again, I include this because it can be helpful for children, for grandchildren, for neighbors, anyone that might be needing help. And that's for anyone from birth up to 21 years old, including processing if they've experienced abuse. Also, we also have a transitional aged youth program, which is a bit of like early intervention, recognizing those behaviors coming up that might be abusive or harmful to provide care for them. And then next we have our advocacy and our case management. And so this helps with safety planning, getting you connected to resources in your community, getting you connected with legal advocacy. So I kind of mentioned it can help with writing orders for protection or harassment restraining orders. There's also things called safe at home applications. If you do leave or move, it keeps your address safe. Lease breaks or lock changes if you're having concerns of safety in your home. Resource connection is getting you connected for basic needs as well as potential housing assessments or referrals to other available programming. And then safety planning is just that, looking at what can I do? How can I come up with a plan to keep myself safe or find people that help me get safe? Yeah, I believe I'm trying to remember what was my next slide after this one. I think, yeah, that was it. So this is our information, mndap.org for Minnesota DAP. You can look at that. There's so much information, and also with the information Anna Rita put in the chat, you can connect. You can also call that number and get connected. That's the best way to get connected to services. Or also, if you ever feel interested in volunteering, we have volunteers that serve as well. And that is our address. But again, we are also able to do virtual services. So I appreciate you all for sharing, and we'll open it up to questions. I see Ann Rita's already putting great information in the chat, and she'll help answer some of these questions too. Oh, actually, I think we're going to hear from our Linda Gale first. So
yeah, and
thank you.
Let me preface that before we start. We will be hearing via video from a victim survivor, Linda Gale Roy. And Linda Gale Roy is a Minneapolis writer who has just finished her memoir, Swallowing the Silent, a coming-of-age survival story wrapped within a family saga. She has a Bachelor's of Arts in Writing from Metro State, and for the past 15 years, she's been a speaker for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, in our Own Voice program. Linda also speaks on the subject of domestic abuse, violence, sexual assault, and being your best self. So let's hear her story, and then we'll continue.
My name is Linda Gale Roy. I am a writer and a public speaker. I came to DAP in the mid-'80s, so 40 years ago, and it has changed my life. My journey through life has really been filled with violence from the time I was a child. My mother was physically and emotionally abusive. When your parents love you, and they told me over and over, nobody will ever love you like your mother, you begin to equate violence with love. And I feel like I was set up in life to marry people who were abusive. What brought me to DAP wasn't one particular incident. I was in psychotherapy. I had been hospitalized a few times by that point. My life was a mess. I was in a therapist's office looking for answers to the mess that I felt I had created. And she pulled out the information for DAP, and she suggested that I go through the program. It changed my life. DAP impacted me by giving me the information that I needed so I could see myself. And I loved my husband. I loved him dearly, and I wanted it to work. Everybody wants someone to love them. That's what keeps people connected to their violent relationships. It's not all bad. It's not black and white. It's varying shades of gray. And you're the one organization that works with people where they're at. And my husband, there was a change in him. He said he realized that he was a very angry young man. And this was something he had learned from his father. And that when you hate yourself, you can't love someone else. My partner treats me like a queen right now. We give each other a hug first thing in the morning and before we go to bed. I am just so very happy. This is what it's supposed to be like. We look at violence in our communities, and really violence starts in the home. I don't think we should be spanking children. If you don't want to be hit, what are you doing hitting children? We're teaching our children violence from the time they're young. And then when they go out into the world, we're puzzled because the world is so violent. You empower DAP by donating. You give them the fuel they need to do what they have done for me and how many other thousands of women. You not only changed my life, but you have changed my children's lives. Even if they found themselves in abusive relationships, they got out. And I think that they saw the change within our family and knew it was no longer acceptable. Every dollar ripples really through the community. The dollars that were invested in me rippled through my kids' lives and my grandchildren's lives. That's very empowering.
Thank you, Linda Gale. We
My
thank
name-
we thank you for your
Really good.
on writing a book, and your story is one that can empower all of us. So, Ms. Alex, do we have a question or comment? And to your point, it is a beautiful story of reconciliation.
Yeah, I typed a question earlier, and it was just around what do you do when the abuser is the, since we're talking about caregiving, is the ill or the elder person?
Yeah, and I'll hop in, but I'm always like quick to hop in, but Ann Rita, feel free to hop in as well. I just want to validate like that is real. And I think that's something so often when we are coming in and trying to provide services or trying to help, a lot of times it's not always seeing like the reality of the situation of I might be experiencing abuse and also I'm caregiving. I'm taking care of someone who is ill or who is aging. And so with that, I think just honoring the complexities and coming in and seeing how can we help. I think safety planning is something that comes to my mind, and also finding maybe ways for safety planning and maybe therapy for yourself, at least, you know, to kind of find space for healing, for boundaries. And I see Ann Rita's unmuted, so I want to let her take over because she has such beautiful wisdom in all of this.
Good morning, everyone. It's such a, thank you for the question. We find that in our work, coordinated care is a huge piece in supporting families. So in that question, my mind immediately goes to the family. What does the support network look like? How can we support the family? With elderly abuse, we find, and I go back to this saying, you know, it's hard because they know what they know. They come from a different generation. We have to go back and understand those things from the beginning to where we are now. And for us to understand those things, you know, we really have to get connected with the families. So it's a question that takes a lot of movement with us to understand the different points in someone's lifetime to where they've gotten to where they are now. But our focus is always on the healing process.
There any other question?
I don't see any more here in the chat. Oh, so it says, can you give tools on what to do or things to say when you know DV is going on in a relationship, but the person's not ready to leave?
Good question.
So I can hop in here. That's something that I hear a lot. It's, you know, especially when maybe you're hearing this information, or even of folks that come to DAP and they recognize this in other people in their lives. I think the biggest thing is, you know, maybe just showing your support. It can take a long time for someone to recognize that there's DV going on in general, to even name the violence that's happening. As well as to even leave. I think because there's love, there's hope, there's care, there's history, there's fear, there's different constraints. And so the biggest thing is just to know how to show up and support and be able to say, hey, I want you to know, you know, I'm here for you if you ever want to talk about anything, or if, you know, you're ever, you know, I hear this and I want you to just remember, like, if you ever want to talk about what your options are, if you want to talk about just what makes you feel good, or even letting them know, hey, I'm here for you. If you ever need to call, you can give me a call, or if you ever, you know, need a night away, if that's possible. That's being someone who is a support for someone, and being someone that they can, whether they're doing it themselves internally or talking to someone about coming up with who can I talk to about this, that is the biggest piece. Because more often than not, I hear stories of people who are like, coming in like, you gotta leave, and that can be really hard for someone who's in that process still. And the biggest thing that is such a lifesaver is just knowing, I know they're here for me, and I know they're here for me, and their support's not going to change. And also sharing just that you're there, and you want them to be safe, and you want them to be happy and healthy.
Thank you for that. I will be open and transparent here. I was a victim of domestic violence in my first significant relationship, in which I married my high school sweetheart. And a lot of what's been said today, I experienced. And when you talk about how to get help and support, for me, I always turned to an aunt of mine when I thought things were escalating. And her answer to me always was, just be quiet, Laverne, don't talk. Well, I couldn't accept that because I knew I was a much better person than that. But I also had a supervisor or boss at that time, I was living in Houston, who saw evidence of an episode I had experienced with my ex-husband. He had pushed my head into a wall and I had a gash, and I was trying to cover it up when I was having full head of hair. And he came to me that day and leaned into me and said, "Are you okay? I'm here to help. Just whenever you want to talk." And that meant the world to me because I was trying to hide. I was trying to keep it a secret, but someone saw and someone gave me that courage to know that I was not alone. So to those who may be experiencing it or going through it, know that there is help and support. And thanks to organizations like DAP, we do have services. I found myself working in the field 14 years later through Harriet Tubman Center and learned a lot about what I had gone through and didn't have the words or the language at the time, but I am truly, a much better person. I am, certainly in a healthy relationship in my life and have been since then, but there are ways that we can all get through it and we can all be stronger and better survivors for it. So thank you. I think we have some other questions.
Laverne, thank you so much for sharing. That's so powerful. Mocha asks, besides donating, how can we be involved or assist DAP in their work?
I mean, this is assistance in itself. You guys have us on this forum, right? We're able to speak on TV and share the support that we have out here. I also want to thank Laverne for sharing because and a thought that immediately popped in my head is that so many victims out there feel judged for sharing their struggles and they don't want to seek help in fear of that embarrassment and shame and judgment. So the best tool we can give them is just to be open. For many people who haven't been through DV situations, it's easy to say, well, why doesn't she do this? Why does she do that? And go through all these scenarios of what a victim should do. But really and truly, the reality is it's truly hard to come forward and speak on those horrific things that you're going through as a victim in DV. So sitting there and being in that moment and being that need in that moment, helping that need in that moment, opening your mind and not closing that door, having no judgment, and just allowing someone to take their time and their, pace themselves to come through it is really, really important. And the question just totally slipped my mind. What was that question again? My apologies.
It's other ways to support DAP in addition to donations.
Oh, okay. We do have volunteer opportunities. You just have to call us. We have, we're always collecting hygiene products to help victims transition from one unsafe location to a safe location. We're coming through in winter. Coats have been something that we've been looking for during this cold weather. Ooh, this cold weather is something different. It's not like Hawaii, I tell you that. We're always looking for, children's size clothes. Just the phone number, you just call us and we'll give you a list. Things change from day to day. We go according to the needs of our participants. So yeah, just give us a call and we'll let you know what's there. And from the top of my head, I think that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, I would hop into exactly that. And I think I loved Ann Rita when you started by just being here and being able to share. I think, you know, not even just like supporting DAP, but supporting just this movement that we're a part of is what you
Absolutely.
learn, sharing it with other people. Yeah. And like being able to like share this information with other people and talk about it. I think we don't always talk about it. We rarely talk about it, you know, and so just taking what you've learned here today and sharing it out. And that's how we build that healing in our communities.
Perfect. Keisha asked, how do you help someone who is in denial of abuse?
So denial is, I'm not going to say it's not present. We've seen it, unfortunately, right? Some tactics that we've had people call in for their loved ones and asked us, hey, you know, my relative, my friend, whoever is going through this, but you know, I just don't know how to get them out of it. And again, we go back to, hey, you know, we have to think about what the definition of relationships have been for this person for a while, and maybe just sitting down and having those conversations, right? Heartfelt conversations. And it takes time. We can't rush someone out of something that they don't want to be out of, right? We can't rush someone to understand something that they're not in that capacity to understand just yet. But what we can do is just simply be there for them. We have to just be there for them and then show them what love really looks like. You might be the only reflection of what love looks like to that person. So the patience in that process is very, very detrimental. I've seen relatives and friends get frustrated and be like, well, forget it. If that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. It's a very tedious process to not, if you're not understanding that hurts and that long-lived pain that someone is going through, that denial is going to look really unfamiliar. So we ask people to call us. We can also mentor you through things, coach you some things to help you with tools. And then hopefully, you know, one day they step into that light to give us a call and we can take it from there.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other question? Well, this has been very, very enlightening. Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Ann Rita, for sharing such powerful information. And we all need to understand how we can show up and support persons going through it, whether we, you know, sense it, know it, or believe that it is happening, and, you know, helping to also keep that person or those persons safe. Again, even in my own situation at the time, I always knew that there was a time for me to go, and I knew I had to plan it, and I knew I had to plan it in a way that I could get out safely, because even though I can joke about it now, I always said I did not ever want to end up on the 6 o'clock news. And it became that volatile at times that I felt like, oh yeah, it's time to go. And, you know, I looked at myself and how I was raised, and I thought, well, I'm not that person. You know, I've been raised better. I have great parents who taught me well, and I just didn't look like what I thought a domestic violence victim looked like. But truly, I was one. So there is a way out, and we all know that there are great resources out here. So thank you, Dap, for all that you shared with us today, and for connecting it to our mental well-being. Also, these two topics today have really given us, you know, ways to utilize the tools that we've been given. And I pray and hope that we will all be able to show up for the people in our lives who need us in more ways than one. And with that, I think we are ready for turning it back over to our co-chair, Ann Wade and Lois McCray. Am I right? Unless we have other questions, I'm checking before we go. Yeah. So thank you to all of our presenters today. Thank you to Alzheimer's Association in Minnesota, North Dakota chapter. Thank you to DAP. Thank you to each of you for your words of wisdom and your words of encouragement and the tools that you have provided us with to be able to go out and be the best citizens and human beings that we can be for those we love and for ourselves. So thank you. So Ann and Lloyd, it's all yours.
Thank you. We would like to encourage you to please complete our Caregiving and Aging Forum survey. This is very helpful to us because this helps us know what you are interested in. This is our 4th annual program, and we use the feedback from the survey to plan the program for the next year. So at the end of the presentation, when you sign out, the survey will pop up, and when you close your Zoom. So please take a few moments and complete it for us, and we would appreciate that. Next slide. At this moment, we would like to thank the members of the panel for taking time out on a Saturday morning to come out and share with us. We know how busy Saturdays are, and so many people, that's one day that they use to get so much done. But you were willing to come and share with us this morning, and we really appreciate it. The same for our members of the Minneapolis St. Paul Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We appreciate you helping us out this morning, being here to facilitate our program and to help us through. We have some volunteers that have helped us every year. They are so dedicated and so committed, and we just can't thank them enough. And for our attendees, we put these programs on for you. So we really hope that we are giving you some tools that you can use and providing you with information that you can use that can make a difference in your life. We want to offer a special thank you to our partners that joined in with us today. The Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota chapter, and the Domestic Abuse Project. Working with them has been wonderful experience, and we just appreciate them agreeing to come and present with us today. So a special thank you to them. And Wade.
All right, thank you so much. And now we want to thank our Caregiving and Aging Forum volunteers, our chapter president, Dr. Stephanie Barrage, who supports us always. And we want to thank our event moderator, Laverne McCartney Knightman. She is so great. We really appreciate you today. Tamara Williams, who is absolutely great with our music and our PowerPoint presentation. Thank you so much, Tamara. I can't say enough. Tina Curry, who is on point with our timekeeping. Virginia Clay Chisholm, who is right there ready to watch the door for us. And then for our Caregiving and Aging Technology team, Pamela Jackson, whom I've called, I've emailed, I've texted, I've hugged and said hello wherever I see her. Jasmine Mason, who I call early in the morning, text late at night. I know she knows me well by now. Alex Merritt, who we always say, can you come back next year? Because she does so much in the chat. Mona Waterson Smith, she knows she's on every year. So I just say, okay, Mona, we'll see you next year. Brittany, who is such a sweetheart, and she's out of state today, but so willing to help us this year. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We cannot thank you enough. To our listening audience, we would not be able to do this without you. So thank you, everyone. Go out and make it a wonderful day. We appreciate you. Let everyone know about the Caregiving and Aging Forum. Please share these resources because the whole point of this is to get the information out to the community so that those persons who need the information will have the information, be able to use it when they need it, and share it with others. Again, we thank you for your attendance today, and have a great day.
Yeah, we got to finish early, so thank you.
Oh,
Yes,
I
we
have
got
one
to-
announcement.
Okay.
I just want to announce to our Delta Deers that we will be having our Delta Deer meeting coming up on March the 12th. And we're going to continue the focus on mental wellness. And we will be focusing on mental wellness in the schools. And our own Carol Gupton will talk to us. She is a retired educator from the University of Minnesota. So we look forward to continuing our focus on mental wellness and talking about mental wellness in the schools.
Specifically on youth.
On youth.
Yes, yes. So thank you for coming and have a great day. And so if our team of volunteers can stay on so we can have a few minutes of debriefing, and if the presenters would like to stay for a few minutes, that would be great.
Thank you for our listening audience. Thank you again for today. Wonderful.
Yes.